ULEC is dedicated to providing this series of webinars designed to capture some of the significant events that form an infrastructure to support Ukrainian bilingual education programming in Canada. The work of educators, leaders, and the community deserve a history that we hope to record for future generations. Today, we are pleased to bring you a webinar about the experiences of Albertan administrators, teachers, parents, students, and a researcher on intercultural competency as they participate in a high school exchange with a high school in Lviv. Thank you, Melody Kostyuk, Luba Eshenko, Natalia Kostyuk, Olena Hartsula, and Larysa Hayduk for agreeing to share your experiences and for your hard work in preparing today's presentation. You will find the biographies of our speakers in the chat, as well as a link to a feedback form, which we invite you to complete. Please write your questions in the chat so the speakers can answer them either in the chat or at the end of the webinar when we will have some time for discussion. Our session will be recorded and the link will be posted on the ULEC website for you and others to view in the future. By making your name and face visible on your screen, you are consenting to allow others to see you. If you would like to participate, then please change your name and use the hide button to conceal yourself. The last question on our feedback sheet invites you to offer suggestions, future topics, and speakers for a future ULEC webinar. So please take some time to think about that. And now I will invite Melody Kostyuk to introduce today's webinar and thank her especially for her coordination of this presentation. Дякую, Melody.
Дякую, Оленко, і дякую всім присутнім, що ви долучилися до нашого вебінару. Я маю приємність представити наших сьогодні спікерів. І хочу також всім подякувати нашим спікерам, що вони погодилися. This has been a wonderful opportunity to have a reunion and to look back at memories of the wonderful time that we had with our school Twinnings and student exchanges. And, you know, я бачу також, що Оксана Вінницька has joined our group, and she was also instrumental in helping us get this project off the ground. So it's been a wonderful opportunity to come together. I would going to just start by maybe asking our presenters to just introduce themselves really briefly and what their part was in the exchange. And throughout our presentation today, you will hear from each of our speakers. Yuri Jala is joining us from Lviv, the director of the Класична Gymnasia. And because of issues with technology, he is just joining us by audio today. So Olena, would you get started, please? Just a quick introduction and the role that you played in our student exchange school twin.
Currently, I am the elementary school teacher in St. Martin's School with the Ukrainian Bilingual Program, but I have the new assignment for the next school year, and I'm going to teach in senior high school, Austin O'Brien, in the Ukrainian Bilingual Program 10-20-30. And my participation in this project was because I was at the beginning of this project when I worked as the consultant in our Lviv government Department of Education, and I was responsible for the international contacts and partnership between Lviv and Lviv region and other countries. And I supported the linkage between the schools, especially at the Ukrainian side. And then it happened that I moved to Canada as the special language advisor in Alberta Education, and in the Ministry of Education of Alberta, I supported this partnership from the other side. At that.
Дякую, Олено. Юрій Джала, чи ви з нами сьогодні на зв'язку? Будь ласка, себе представити.
Не чути.
Я з вами, так.
Ага, супер.
Так. Я перепрошую, бо я виключаю відео, бо у нас немає світла зараз і планові відключення в нашому районі, і тому я мушу економити трафік для того, щоб вас добре чути і в разі потреби буду підключатися. Я Юрій Джала, директор класичної гімназії при Львівському національному університеті імені Івана Франка. Дуже приємно бачити усіх знайомих, хто працює в українсько-канадській програмі. Мені дуже приємно, що я теж потрапив в цю програму. Я потрапив до неї за рекомендацією тодішнього начальника управління освіти міста Львова, колишнього заступника міністра освіти Павла Кузьмовича. Школа потрапила, так? І я як директор цієї школи. І настільки багато обмінів з Едмонтоном, і що в цих обмінах я познайомився з такими людьми, як Мелодія з її усією родиною. Бачу, тут Наталя присутня. Наталя, привіт. Також я познайомився з Любою Іщенко. Люба, дуже приємно. Познайомився з пані Оксаною Винницькою. Ми у Львові познайомилися, так. Пані Оксана, приємно вас бачити через Канаду тут. Я сподіваюся, що ви у Львові, так. І дуже корисна була, і я сподіваюся, як для українців в Едмонтоні, так і для львів'ян, які хотіли побачити, як живуть наші. Друзі, наші українці, як живуть за кордоном, так, і ми мали цю. І, знаєте, і ніби все добре, і
Юрій, дякую. Чудово. І ми від вас почуємо трохи пізніше в презентації, так? Окей, про роль директора. Добре, дякую. Наталя, будь ласка, і тимчасово, Оленко, чи я можу попросити, чи ти не могла до Люби, чи Люба може доєднатися до нас?
Я вже тут.
О, ти тут, супер!
Yeah.
Окей, sorry.
Не видно мене. Я відео включила, плюс мікрофон працює.
Окей, Люба.
Видно, чуємо і бачимо тебе, Любо.
Дуже добре. Можеш себе представити і роль.
Вибачаю, що спізнилася. Я була на одному імейлі і шукаю все, хочу робити. Тоді думаю, може вони вислали мені на my work email, and exactly там було. So я навіть не думала. So anyways, вибачаюся, все нормально тут. Я вчила Наталю, і мені було дуже приємно їхати з нею в Україну. Я була вчителька, я вчила вчила 7, 8 і 9 класи в той час. І що ще можу сказати? 30 років вчила і далі, і тепер я на пенсії, але далі заступаю і люблю бути між учнями в школі. So, я не знаю, що ще сказати.
Добре, ми від тебе потім почуємо. Бо ти грала дуже активну роль в цьому. Добре, Наталя.
Привіт всім, hello. Мене звати Наталя Костюк. Я вчителька в українській програмі тут в Sherwood Park. І я вчу 6 клас. Це мій 4-й рік, я вже вчу. І я брала участь in the exchange program. І я буду трохи про це сьогодні говорити. Передаю привіт, пане Джала, гарно вас бачити. І я також вчила, я трохи розкажу, трохи пізніше, я вчила рік в Києві також в приватному школі. Дуже приємно тут бути з вами.
Добре, мене звати Мелодія чи Melody Kostюk. I played the role of a parent for the exchanges, but I was also working with Edmonton Public Schools at the time. I was a consultant for languages, so I played the part of kind of assisting in working with Alberta Education and with our partners in Ukraine to ensure that the school twinnings and the student exchanges were successful. So that was my role. So I think we're ready to start. So welcome everyone. Вітаємо щиро всіх. We're going to start, if we can start with the PowerPoint, please. We thought we would start with just a quick background about how it kind of came to be that that we engaged in school twinnings and later student exchanges. So in a sense, and if we can get the PowerPoint started, Yakuyu, at this time, the stars and the planets had kind of aligned in the way of language education in Alberta. And for those that are maybe not aware, the Ukrainian Bilingual Program was the first bilingual program in Alberta, and many have followed since. So we have been pioneers in language education in Alberta. And when I say that the stars and the planets were aligned, there was lots happening at this time in Alberta. We just had a new curriculum that was developed to support language arts and bilingual programs. And for the first time, there was a focus on, of course, on language skills and strategies, but also on global citizenship and intercultural competence. So as educators, we were tasked with thinking about, well, how do we then open the world to our students in order for them to interact with other students their age to develop their skills in global citizenship and intercultural competence. You can't do that within the confines of a classroom in Edmonton, Alberta. So that got us started looking for partnerships. Also, at this time, our province was looking for a new provincial, we were looking at a new provincial requirement for the study of a second language that was supposed to take effect in 2006. So there was a lot of energy going towards developing curriculum and resources, teacher training, and a renewed interest in looking at student exchanges and school twinnings to connect our students with the world. At the time, we had a politician and a dear friend who is no longer with us, Jean Zwozdetsky, was an MLA, and our premier at the time, Premier Klein, had invited him to accompany him on a mission to Lviv and Kiev to Ukraine in June 2006. As part of the mission, the twinning of 3 schools in Alberta with 3 schools in Lviv was recognized by the minister at this time. That was June 2006. And one of the goals of the premier and the government of the time was to work with government counterparts to help to promote Ukrainian language development in Alberta. At the time, we had 3 Alberta schools that were twinned. Svitanok Primary School of Lviv, Lida Andrushko was the director, and Holyrood School of Edmonton. Lviv Secondary School, Bogdan Voloshin was the principal, twinned with Dalwood School of Edmonton, and the Classical Gymnasium School of Lviv, National University, Yuri Jala, who is with us, was the principal, and that school was twinned with Baldwin. After that time, we also had schools from Elk Island Catholic, Elk Island Public, and Edmonton Public that also twinned with schools in Lviv. So it was really, really exciting times. There was a memorandum of understanding that was signed also between the Alberta government and Lvivska Oblast. And a part of that was to support school twinnings and also for the posting of a Ukrainian language and culture advisor to Alberta. So our first was Romana Bedri, and then came Olena Hartsula, who's with us today, and currently Natalia Nayavko is in that position. So for 1 year, we had school twinnings. Everything was formalized, and our teachers worked hard to try to come up with projects that were meaningful and engaging for students where they could communicate at the time. And if you can appreciate it, 2007, we didn't have Zoom. We didn't have many of these platforms to communicate. And Luba will talk to us a little bit later, but sometimes it was just letter writing and other projects that we tried to connect. A director of mine at curriculum at the time asked how things were going with the school twinnings. And I said, well, we're really having being challenged to communicate in a meaningful way. And he at the time gave the go ahead. He said, listen, if we want this to work, we need to get our people over to Ukraine. We need to meet with our school counterparts and make this work. Thank you for getting the PowerPoint. So here we see actually the first gathering. So in 2007, I led a delegation of principals from Edmonton Public Schools, lead teachers, and we had a teacher representative from Edmonton Catholic also. We traveled to Ukraine and we met with officials at the oblast level. Here we see Pavlo Khobze. We see Yuri, we see Dean Michalidis, who was the principal at Baldwin School at the time. And this we discovered was the key to success. Once our teachers, there's Luba and her twin, her school partner, once we established those personal connections, it made the world of difference to be able to move to the next step, which was going into a student exchange program. So this allowed us opportunities to go into the schools, to be able to meet with our colleagues, with students, with parents. So when we came back to Edmonton, we were able to share with our school board authorities, with our parents that, hey, we met the school, we've checked things out. So that kind of launched, and we have been able to, or we in the course of the time have had 4 exchanges with our twin schools, the Klasichna Gimnasia, and we're happy to share with you what worked, what the benefits were, what some of the challenges were, and then we will hear from Larysa Hayduk, who joined us on one of our trips to do research into the role of student exchanges for the development of intercultural competence. So we're going to start with hearing a short few words from a student that participated in the program. So Natalia, будь ласка.
Okay, дякую. I was the first myself. You can see me in this picture here in the newspaper. This was the first round of exchanges for the program with the exchange, and it was an honor to be part of that first group. And being in grade 9 at the time, I was just excited to go travel with some of my good friends. And prior to the exchange, we had actually started pen pal, like we had pen pals from Ukraine that we were in contact with, and who we got to know over the span of a few months prior to this exchange program. And Luba did a phenomenal job organizing this, along with many other people on this call. So already we were getting to know some of these counterparts and these people that we were going to meet in Ukraine, which made us more excited for this program and for this opportunity. And this opportunity was truly life-changing for me. I think my love for Ukraine really, I guess, started with this opportunity. It was my first time in Ukraine, and I grew up speaking the language and being involved in the community. But once I was actually there experiencing and adjusting to the culture there, the environment, and being able to use the language with people my own age and creating those friendships. That's what really sparked my love for Ukraine. And, you know, I still have friends that I talk to now from this exchange. I stayed with a family, the Marina family, and it was such an amazing experience to be there and get to know the family. And these are still relationships that I currently have and have seen many times after the fact. And she has come to Canada with this same exchange, and it's really opened up many doors for me moving forward with my career and traveling to Ukraine many times after. So it's been I guess noticing some of the similarities and differences, being there, being able to use our language and improve on that language, even seeing the differences as teenagers. You know, being a teenager in Canada versus a teenager in Ukraine, and some of the challenges, right? And seeing how school is different in Ukraine versus Ukraine. These were some of the experiences for me that was very rewarding, and I guess the biggest thing that I took away was these long-lasting friendships that I've been able to make and hold so dear to my heart, and that's, I guess, for me the biggest thing. So it's given me a broader sense of Ukraine, of our culture, and which led me to actually be able to go back to Ukraine. And I did a course in Lviv, and then later, a few years ago, I actually taught in Kyiv, and at a private school. And I attribute that to my experience with this exchange program, because it introduced me to schooling there and made me more comfortable with being able to take that opportunity and be a teacher in Ukraine. And so it's been very interesting. And I think had I not had this exchange program, this opportunity, I don't know if I would have been to Ukraine many times after, or been able to do a course there with the U of A, or potentially have had that opportunity to teach in Kyiv.
Good. Дякую, Наталю.
Mm-hmm.
So we're hoping in this, to provide different perspectives, to share these experiences. So thank you so much. In order to have a successful program, we need support from many different people. And one of the most important roles was the role of the teacher and the teachers in making this happen. So I'd like to call on Luba Eshenko to talk about her role and share some of her strategies for preparing students for successful exchanges. So Luba, будь ласка.
Чи, вибачте, я не була на вступ. Чи ми повинні англійською говорити? Всі розуміють, так? Is that... I'm sorry, I missed the introduction, so I wasn't sure.
Yes, we have asked this webinar to be in English because we think that perhaps future administrators in learning this history, and then they will be able to understand.
Okay. Yeah, okay, thanks for that clarification. Okay, so I think as the role of the teacher, it was definitely multifaceted. There were so many moving parts. I know that in other travels to other countries like France or Italy, exchanges are done by a company, and they take care of all the logistics of it. But in our case, not having that possibility with Ukraine, everything was grassroots, everything was scratch, everything was beginning, everything was major collaboration with people in place. So my role was the classroom, preparing the students. My role was the before stuff, included meetings with parents. I think the biggest thing is when you are passionate or enthusiastic about any idea, things really start to come into play, and the energy is there, and everybody was so positive. Meeting you, Yuri, and Olena was so inspirational to my principal, Dean McLeady's at the time. So the pushes, the supporting principal, huge impact on the ball rolling and things happening. That our relationship, our connection that we felt with Yuri and with Olena was undescribable. And so together we were all in it, and our hearts and souls, and everybody was always moving with it. So the meetings with the parents, creating tasks for students, getting them engaged, like the language skills of our students for communication wasn't in place. And so to be able to have a conversation when you arrive in your family, when those are things that you don't have that skill set for, was very challenging. So immediately things were shifting on how to teach and what you're teaching, talking to the school board, all the paperwork, the logistics of it. In the meantime, I'm running a classroom with students, grade 7, 8, 9, and planning every day. So that was all pre-exchange stuff. And then during the trip, once we got, один батько сказав, куй поки жидійсько гаряче. So all of a sudden we had these parents and these students that were keen to go and willing to be the first, willing to be the pioneers. And then during the trip, once we were there, it was basically being in check, because Yuri and Olena and his staff, the work that they did for us to be there was so impressive. The meals, the families, the host families, the excursions that we had, creating all the detail to the itinerary, so many things to take care of. And then after we had done the exchange, the first one was a huge eye-opener, and then we hosted, and then after, it was providing opportunities for students to reflect. So how was it for you? What were your experiences? And then following up with the next trip, saying, okay, there are things we need to get in place. We need to tweak this. So the language and cultural activities that followed. Yeah, I think, yeah. So when we went on one of the trips, I decided, and I was connected with the university. So the University of Alberta, the Cool Foundation, to have students posting projects on this website. So I had engaged my students in doing some research. We did some interviews, whether it was through the letters, asking questions. When we were there, they had questions. We were doing a research on what do teens do in their free time in Ukraine? What are the fashion things? I really had decided that it was important to make it relevant to our students, something that they'd be interested in doing, something that they were curious about, and capturing their engagement through their curiosity and wanting to learn more.
Next slide.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. We haven't practiced this, so. Yeah, so part of the hype was also getting not so much social media, but media involved, because at that time we didn't have Instagram and we didn't have Facebook. So it was the Edmonton Journal, and then it was Visti, getting them involved, contacting them and saying, hey, we're doing these things. How can you support this endeavor that we're doing? So that also made it exciting. Now, the picture in the middle shows we did some orphanage stuff. I had a really strong calling to do some work with to help orphans in Ukraine. And when the students learned that in Canada, we don't have orphanages, but in Ukraine, they do. So the students made sewing projects, connected with the other teacher, made projects, wrote letters, and sent a care package to an orphanage in Ukraine. And so they really felt this positive feeling of doing something, making a difference. One of the research topics was teen fashion. How does Canadian fashion compare to Ukrainian? So they prepared research questions and they recorded videos, and we sent them to the gymnasia. The students replied and they answered, well, we wear blue jeans, or we do this, we do that. So it was really an opportunity to use Ukrainian for speaking, because that was my big goal. How do I engage my students to speak Ukrainian? And so oral performance tasks, they had to do a little scenario. They had written tasks where they had to write about their favorite clothes. They wrote letters, as Natalia had mentioned. They presented information through those. We did a little bit of emails. And at one point, there was attempts for Skyping, though we had the challenge with the time change. But these are also pictures of other interactive things that we were able to do after our experience with realizing, hey, there's real people out there, and there's a realness to using Ukrainian, not just about learning it in class, but actually using it. And so how could we? So we went there in the fall, and we were hosted by Ukraine, by Lviv, by our Shkola and our parents. And then immediately within that same year, we had hosted Lviv students to come from the gymnasia. And that was a huge project because we had 2 exchanges happening in 1 year. After that, we realized that 1 a year exchange was plenty of work and would be most effective. So they spent, well, while they were there, obviously authentic Ukrainian language and culture, living with host families. That was phenomenal for the students. To the love of the people, the warmth, the care, the mother who stayed home from work because, Natalia, if you remember, but Jessica was sick with a cold. And she says, Pani Eshenko, she was rubbing Vaseline on my chest. She was making me tea. She stayed home from work. So the students experienced these connections with people who really genuinely cared about them. There's just some photos here we did some dance-a-thons to raise money to take to Ukraine to help orphans. And when we got there, Yudi, took us shopping, and we went and bought all the things at the orphanage. And very powerful was taking the students to the orphanage and being amongst those beautiful children that just lit up my students' hearts and their eyes to the culture, the people, the needs of helping. And so I always felt it was important to not only teach the mind, but to teach the heart. So when we went there, we had a purpose, and we had that opportunity to make a difference in someone's life. So over the years, we had raised $31,000 that went towards our. So these are sort of projects that came about from travels with Ukraine and engaging students in that.
And Luba, I'm going to just jump in here.
Yeah.
We were really excited to hear that the Klasyczna Gimnazia had a project that they supported a particular orphanage in Ukraine. So we were able to, to add to that, to their work. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Excellent. Yeah. So we personally visiting the an orphanage on each trip was really good. And you can see the students here engaged, Natalia there, and they loved it. That was very, it was very personal for all of the kids. These are some of the proud things that we had done. We also did some CBC radio interviews. Students went to talk about their trip, which got students in another way engaged and using Ukrainian for a purpose and realizing that there was a whole world out there and sometimes they wrote a little article about it. And then we continued with writing letters and keeping in contact with families. So as Natalia said, the connections were huge.
I would like to make a note here because it seems that the typo is 2018, right? No?
I'm sorry?
No,
The year mentioned here, or 2014, because it's after your visits, right?
can you hear, Luba?
Yeah, what was the date on what was that?
2008, or which was it?
Yeah, 2008 was the first trip.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then 2013, and the journal translate report about students preparing Christmas greetings. Okay, fine.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so we know that successful student exchanges need support from many different levels. And I will introduce, so, будь ласка, Юрій, яка роль директора? And we posted this picture, це фото показує, яке було, ну, стосунки між нашими директорами. So, будь ласка, Юрій, щоб ви розказали про вашу роль і трошки про з вашої точки зору про цей обмін. Just an interesting little story here. The importance of doing that initial visit to Lviv and visiting the schools and meeting the people on that end. That made the world of difference. We saw a huge buy-in on the role of the principals, who played a very important role in supporting the exchange. Parents had a lot of questions at the beginning, and there were fears about how the success of the program. I remember when Dean, our principal, walked into the classroom or into a meeting with parents, and the parents were concerned, well, how can my child miss 2 weeks of school? And he basically said, well, he said, this is schooling that they are not going to find in a classroom. So having that voice, and then, you know, the principals also have connections with school board and superintendents. And so it was very important to have our principals on board. Юрій?
Отже, яка роль директора? Ви знаєте, роль директора – це знайти доброго вчителя, який би міг провадити цей контакт. І фактично ці контакти відсотків 80 на собі виносили Люба і Галина, тобто вчителі. Так, навіть не 80, а 90, а я як директор тільки допомагав їм тобто допомагав, щоб ці контакти були якомога комфортнішими. Тобто я комунікував з батьками, комунікував з зовнішніми організаціями, коли треба було залучити якісь додаткові ресурси. Це є і, наприклад, організація харчування для дітей, так, це є і екскурсії, це є, можливо, якісь сприяння від посадовців, так. Тобто все, що треба було, тут я вирішував, але це було за зверненням фактично Галини, коли вона казала, нам потрібно це. Тобто це те, що вона не могла вирішити, і я йшов і вирішував, і, власне, якби не було от дуже доброї комунікації між Галиною і Любою, фантастичної просто комунікації, вони, мені здається, розуміли один одного з півслова, і розуміли, що одна одній потрібно для організації цих обмінів, і просто передавали. Я бачив, як сприяв нашим обмінам Дін Міхалідіс, теж фантастичний директор. Я пам'ятаю першу зустріч, коли ми з Галиною прийшли на вулицю Костюшка, в наш методичний центр, коли приїхала перша делегація з Канади, делегація директорів, і ми так сіли в залі і подивилися там. Нам чисто візуально сподобалася Люба і Міхалідіс, і кажемо, от було б добре, щоб вони з нами були. І нас поділили, власне, на ту школу. Тобто така симпатія, вона є дуже важлива. Тобто, коли є і внутрішня симпатія, і намагання організувати якусь справу добре, то це з цього і виходить. Тому, напевно, ми єдині так потужно робили ті обміни з міста Львова. Я знаю, що ще були обміни, так, але все-таки гімназія тут йшла і показувала попереду, як це має бути. Я також допомагав вчителям організовувати батьків, коли це було потрібно. Пам'ятаю, Я пам'ятаю, як ми верталися, до речі, з Едмонтону, і в мене таке було враження, що нас Канада не хотіла відпускати. Знаєте, чи ви пригадуєте друге повернення, коли вибухнув вулкан десь в Англії, так? І ми до останнього дня не знали, чи ми будемо вилітати, чи що нам робити. І вольове рішення все-таки було за директором. Так, ми їдемо в Торонто, бо в Торонто буде все одно наступний літак наш буде. Так, пам'ятаю, як одного разу діти, це остання, здається, подорож була наших дітей в Канаду, вони поверталися, і польська сторона, ну, скажімо так, не зовсім коректно поставилася до дітей. На основі цього виникла навіть нота протесту від Міністерства закордонних справ до уряду Польщі про те, що наших дітей протримали на бетоні у аеропорту Варшави. І тут також я робив все можливе, щоб це ніби перед батьками було принаймні принесено моральні вибачення і перед дітьми за те, що так сталося. Так? Тоді навіть до гімназії приїжджав уповноважений президента України з прав дітей, щоб захистити їх. І фактично такі речі вони відбувалися за участі, зрозуміло, що директора. Так? Тобто були десь такі речі, які треба було вирішувати безпосередньо керівнику. Зрозуміло, що це питання, які пов'язані з фінансами, можливо, бо все-таки на такі обміни потрібні гроші. Так? І, до речі, немалі. Я хочу подякувати українцям з Едмонтону за те, що вони фінансували поїздки вчителів до Канади, бо вчитель собі це не може дозволити. Учні, то вони учням квитки забезпечували їх батьки, так, а вчителям все-таки забезпечував цей проект. І я дуже вдячний стороні українській програмі в Канаді, так, за те, що вони це взяли на себе. І я кажу, роль директора є просто бажання робити і мати добру команду для таких обмінів. Бо кожного разу до Едмонтону їздили інші вчителі, я стараюся, щоб ці вчителі були ті, які хочуть, які можуть і які будуть добре робити. Десь ось так воно виглядає.
Добре.
Я ще можу дати відповіді на питання, якщо є. Бо я не знаю, про що далі говорити. Роль директора.
Я думаю, що...
Вона була дійсно на 10% відносно того, що робили вчителі.
Дякую, Юрій. Я думаю, що в кінці, вже після всіх презентацій, тоді учасники можуть завдавати питання. Добре? Чи ви можете бути ще на зв'язку з нами?
Я постараюся, якщо це дозволить інтернет.
Добре. І я бачу, що Олена, це дуже добра думка, Олена. Будь ласка.
Я хотіла би тут додати, що, звичайно, я на 100% погоджуюся з паном Джалою, що на 90% партнерство є успішним завдяки вчителям, які хочуть це робити. І тих 10% або, можливо, 9,5% – це роль директора. І there's the huge, also maybe not that huge as the school principals or teachers' role, but the stakeholders are also, their roles are very important, because that partnership wouldn't take place if there were no agreements between two countries, and there was no support from our school boards. And of course, in 2014, the war started with our eastern neighbor, and there were some challenges to make these meetings, international meetings, happen. And we were looking for different other concepts to maintain the partnership. And here on this slide, you can see the QR code, and it's for my blog, which is, I don't do it, I don't support it now, but I didn't close it. And I noticed that almost 30,000 viewers are now, that even now they go to this blog to see about the partnership. So in this blog, you can see this QR code, and there are some main things that were happening besides meeting each other and coming to Canada, and when the Canadian students go to Ukraine. So I wouldn't like to touch deeply on that. You can see that there are lots of activities. They are probably the food for thought for future partnerships.
Я це на всі тому зв'язку затягують.
Дякую, Olena. And thank you. Just a reminder about stakeholders. It was very important to have the memorandum of understanding in place. It gave credibility to the student exchange, the school board support, of course, and the different levels. Thank you for adding this, Olena, and people can scan that. Okay, so here we see some of our partners, and I just want to again point out we do have Oksana Viniska, who is our honorary consul from Lviv, and she joined with us. I think it was the first night we arrived, and here we see Olena. She was working as from the Lviv end. Some of our principals. So яка користь для навчання від обмінів учнями? So we do know that there are many benefits to student learning, and we see that there are many ways and many partnerships that we need to support it. So here we see, friendship, enjoying, getting to know one another, and establishing friendships. We're just going to move to the next slide. Thank you. Were there challenges and solutions? Now, we're going to actually hear from our researcher, Larysa Hayduk, a little bit later in the program. And she was a parent at the time and currently doing her study with Dr. Olena on the role of student exchanges and the development of intercultural competence. So we've pulled some of this from her study. And as I said, we will hear from her a little bit later in the presentation. So certainly, and Luba and Olena and whoever can jump in here. There were challenges as we learned through the process. Luba, did you want to speak to this slide?
I'm just cognizant of the time.
Okay.
I'm not sure. So I'll just, in a nutshell,
sure.
There's a lot of, it's a team that has to take on the task, and everybody plays their role. The administrative part, the support from the school board, the teachers, the directors, the parents, the students, all of those pieces together create that puzzle. And some of the challenges that we had, I'm not going to go through each one because it was basically things that would be with any exchange, but there was always ways of the team working together. Bottom line was the solution, coming up with solutions as to make it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next slide. What were the benefits, the outcomes, результати?
Yeah, authentic language, cultural experience. Great. The connection, the relationships was huge. Lifelong altering experiences, greater, as Natalia and others have all said, their appreciation and love for Ukrainian language, culture, and the people. It's not just about language and culture, but it's the people, right? The increased intercultural competence for sure. Students have taken life skills with them, and interest, definitely. In continuing their study of Ukrainian, not for every student, but for many, it was an impact and an influence.
I would like to add something how to continue the partnership. So on the website of our Alberta Education, there is the link with different information and resources for international school partnerships. And if you scan the QR code, you can find it. And of course, it's it's difficult now, challenging now to maintain the partnership because of the war in Ukraine. And this is a very important reason. But besides, their life goes on and students need this partnership, as Yuri Jala said. And using these links, you can take a look how can we maintain it. And even if Edmonton public schools do not have their Ukrainian bilingual program anymore, but Elk Island Catholic schools, Edmonton Catholic schools, and Elk Island public schools have schools with the Ukrainian bilingual programs or Ukrainian culture programs, and they would be very happy to continue to participate. And Yuri Jala, your school is very active, and I know that you would like to continue this partnership, and we will be doing all we can on our side here so that we can switch the partner school, and you can choose any of these school divisions and schools that have the Ukrainian bilingual program to have your successful partnership. So please scan this QR code and you can find the information there.
Okay, дякую. This is important information. Дякую, Olena. Okay, so we do have opportunities, I think, for questions. And as our moderator, Dr. Bilash.
So earlier in the questions, I had asked Natalia if she could tell us a little bit more about this that teenagers experience in Ukraine and in Canada. And maybe we could turn the PowerPoint off, all see one another.
Yeah, I'll quickly share because I know we don't have that much time. I think some of the similarities and differences that I experienced was like schooling in itself. We noticed right away that there was a lot more discipline in Ukraine. A lot more homework was assigned, and just the differences with even after school. We in Canada, we have hockey and dance and so many extracurricular activities. And I found that, at least with my experience in the host family that I was with, they focused on, homework and didn't have as many maybe extracurricular activities as we had in Ukraine. Well, вони просто не займалися так багато, like as we do. And fashion was a big difference that I noticed. We would wear sweatshirts to school, and that was not something we saw in Ukraine. So very, very much like in Canada, we're much more casual. That was something that I experienced, and we just connected with the students and with even music. Like in Canada, we are very, we're used to kind of the traditional Ukrainian songs. We go to the same festivals, and we were able to learn, like the more modern Ukrainian music, and they were able to expose us to new music, new fashion trends, and that really added to that cultural aspect and being able to learn more about, learn more about our culture and our mova in a more modern sense than just having that Canadian experience. So yeah, things like that, even language. I didn't know what surjik meant at the time. We don't see that maybe as much in Lviv, but like that was a big eye opener too, and how fast people spoke. We had to get used to that. And so there were some challenges with mova and being able to understand each other. But I think at the end of the day, we were so interested in one another that it made for such a cool experience. Yeah. So lots of similarities and differences. I don't know if there's any questions about like specific.
Yeah.
specific
Natalia,
questions about
Can
minorities?
I just add that you being somebody there that was an observer, there were a couple of actually quite funny situations. There was a lot of press from the Ukrainian side, and I think Oksana Vinnytska helped to kind of also from the Ukrainian side promote the exchange. And so we were interviewed by a TV station, and one of our students were asked, well, like, what surprised you the most about life in Lviv? And he said, I was shocked. He said, I expected everybody to be walking around in embroidered shirts and blouses. So it's kind of how our students perceive Ukrainian culture in our Canadian context and what the reality is. And then the school had set up a conversation. They called it Kruglый Stil, where students would pose questions. And there was one little student from Ukraine, very, very troubled. And you could see he was bubbling. He wanted to say something. And then he came up and he said, я вас не розумію. Ви кажете, що ви українці. Які ви є українці? Ви не поводитеся так, як українці. And it was that, the teacher unpacked that, and he was shocked by the relationship that the boys and girls had, our Canadians, because during recess break, you're not supposed to hang out. The boys play with boys, girls play with girls, right? So it was those relationships, but there was a lot of that cognitive dissonance, right? That norms were being tested. Like, what do you mean you're Ukrainian? You don't sound like Ukrainians. You don't act like Ukrainians. So that was those were very insightful moments, and you can't replicate that in a language classroom, right? So that you have to have those experiences.
And I recalled one situation when Canadians came to Lviv, and it was a snowstorm in March, and everything was covered like 2 meters of snow for one night, and Canadian students were just strolling around down the empty streets because people were sitting at home. They even couldn't open the doors, and some cars, maybe it was their just emergency, I don't know, they were trying to drive, so Canadian students were helping them to push them so that they are not stuck. Do you remember that?
Yeah. So many special moments and opportunities, right, for understanding. And yeah,
I'll also add, I think the multicultural aspect of Ukrainian students coming to Canada, it was very eye-opening, I think, for them to come to our school, where majority of people are actually a visual minority, and it was shocking for them to see how many people were not white, and to see how we were interacting with Lebanese people, Chinese people from India, and how we could have all these different relationships. And I think that was really good for them to see, wow, like they don't have as much, as many kids in their schools that look different, that have different cultural backgrounds and different languages. So I think that was, I can't speak on their behalf, but I remember seeing, wow, like their faces, like, holy, you know some Arabic because you have some friends that speak Arabic and are able to teach you. And so I think that opens up their world and their eyes as well. So.
Може, ви щось почули, як ваші студенти повернулися з Канади? Якісь зауваги від них?
До кого?
Юрія.
О, до Юрія.
Угу. Чи Юрій ще з нами? На зв'язку?
Але не чути, я.
Я думаю, Оленко, це є дуже добре питання, і я думаю, що було би дуже доцільно, окрім пана Юрія, якщо б ми могли зорганізувати подібну зустріч з учителями, які брали участь в ці і в інших exchange programs. I think it is one thing to see from the perspective of a bystander. It is quite different to be a participant, and we've heard from participants today, and it's wonderful, it's incredible. Yes, it brings back a lot of memories, but it's certainly fantastic to hear your perspective on these things and how you saw these things and how you would like to see it in the future. We do have many challenges at this point, but I do think it would be great if we could have a meeting, Olenko, to see or to hear the perspective of the Ukrainian teachers who travel to Canada. Thank you, Natalia, for your perspective on that. I think it's fascinating.
Well, Dr. Huzar, прошу. Олено.
Щиро дякую за цю надзвичайну
Не чути.
годину. Чути
Ось.
мене? Так?
Чути тебе.
Щиро дякую за цю годину надзвичайно сильної комунікації, професійних таких цікавих фідбеків. Щиро дякую вам. І в продовження пропозиції пані Оксани щойно. Ми в Тернопільському педагогічному університеті 15 років мали школу, до ковіду. Від 2004-го ковід нам зупинив. Кожного року приїжджали студенти Саскачеванського університету і університету Ватерлоу. І це було би дуже гарно, щоб наші викладачі також долучилися і обмінялися, особливо зараз, такий досвід вчителів українських, канадських і оці взаємні професійні такі обміни, вони надзвичайно зараз потужні. І тому ми би радо також долучилися до цього. Наталко, щиро дякую за ці ваші чудові спогади. Ви розповідали, а перед моїми очима стояли наші також студенти, які приїжджали і мали ті самі пригоди, що і ви надзвичайно. Дякую, дякую, Оленко, за цей вебінар. Щиро дякую.
То я думаю,
Чути мене?
чути.
Чути.
Прошу.
Чути, бо могло б... Ви знаєте, відгуки дітей завжди були позитивними. Вони були в захваті від цих поїздок, вони стільки всього мали можливість бачити, вони стільки багато комунікували зі своїми однолітками в Канаді. Що казати, якщо моя Марічка теж була в цих обмінах, так і я ніколи не чув жодного поганого слова. Навпаки, коли ми в сім'ї згадуємо про ту поїздку, так, то завжди вона з великим позитивним і з великим таким ентузіазмом згадує про ту сім'ю Радищів, де вона жила, так, про дітей, які їх водили, там показували, як молодь живе, так, що не бачать дорослі, так. Це теж було їм цікаво бачити цей досвід, так. І я хочу сказати, що і вчителів теж були враження лише захоплюючі. Все-таки ці поїздки організовувалися гарно і є тільки позитивні спогади про нас. Мені дуже приємно, і тому, напевно, і хотілося далі їхати, але що поробиш, сталися ковіди, сталися теракти, тоді були, що не могли вже їздити, так. Я надію, що воно відновиться, ця поїздка, ця програма, і ми ще зможемо комунікувати наших дітей.
Дякую. Я бачу, що ніхто не хоче відійти від нашої цікавої розмови, але виглядає, що вже час, але буде більше, буде далі, напевно. Прошу заповніть фідбек, що лінк є у чат, і хочу ще раз Марії, яка допомагала за нами, behind the scenes, так звано. Дякуємо Мелодію, що керувала свою команду. Любо за уваги з точки зору учителя. Наталю за for sharing your experience and the spot of this trip. Олено, дякую. Ти брала участь і в Україні, і в Канаді, і далі це робить, як будеш high school на другий рік. Я певна, що щось цікаво з того виходить. Оксано, я думаю, що ми мусимо організувати ще вебінар, щоб ти могла розповісти нам про різні проєкти, в яких ти брала участь, і більше про твою позицію, якщо ти згодиш. І я надіюся, і Ларису, яка щось перегляньте, бо в майбутності будеш ще вебінар з нею. Я надіюся, що я нікого не забула.
Ні.
І учасникам і слухачам, що вибрали участь сьогодні. Дуже дякую і до зустрічі.